good writer.
The other 80% is people managing and being being someone whose job it is to answer a question every 5 seconds, because that's your job. Your job is stuff is put in front of you, and you're like, oh, that's a prop. Okay, that one. But you have to do it with a little more confidence, even though you don't have it. You just say, yeah, that one. That one. But you have no idea. There is an element of sort of showmanship in the job that I certainly did not expect. I really just thought I was going to write scripts and be done with it, but there is a whole other level to it that is both exciting and scary.
When my writing partner and I got our first show running job on Brothers and Sisters, which we had worked on for a year, our first trip was to Barnes & Noble, because there were bookstores back then. And we bought these books like How to Handle Difficult People. Nice girls don't get the corner office. It was like amazing, the library. I know, and then it turns out that's not me. And that nice girl, they were just these tricks that I was just like, oh right, that feels weird. It's funny to think you have to put on this manager outfit, but finding that manager person in you that feels organic to you and isn't you imitating the many bosses you've had. It's a weird thing. It's a sort of a strange outfit for someone who just really wants to sit at home and write in their pajamas and tell stories in their head, to be like, oh, I have to ask people to do things.
Don't get me wrong, I still wear my pajamas. As well as you do that.
The hardest thing for me was as a writer coming up in the ranks, you know who you're trying to please. You're trying to please the showrunner. And if you come up with ideas that the showrunner likes, so you write scripts that the showrunner doesn't need to fix, you're the hero. And you get lots of gold stars for like, thanks for saving the day, kid. Great having you on board. And then when you're in that big chair, there's like nobody giving you a gold star. Network does not hand them out. And so that, that can be
only
really,
red checks.
Yeah, that's right. And that can be really hard. And you have to get accustomed to not everyone even liking you anymore. I mean, sometimes you have to tell people that what they gave you isn't what you wanted, and they might stalk off to their office thinking you are an idiot, but you can't let that get under your skin, and that was the hardest thing for me. It still is, honestly. I like to be liked.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything these women have said, and I think it's the most intensive multitasking you'll ever do in your life, and you do have to make decisions, and you can't look back, and you just have to own it, and if you're not confident, act confident, and if it's a mistake down the road, then you learn from it and you keep going. And I think it's also in terms of how to learn how to manage people, it's also how to mentor and how to make other people feel like they can create something and are a part of this, and it's as much theirs as it is yours, and create that kind of an environment that's positive. And then also, you're in a power position all of a sudden, and it's about giving back in my mind, and finding, empowering other people who, make your room more diverse, fill it with people who are from different places, more women than men maybe, because, for me, I was maybe one of two women in a writer's room my whole career, and this was the first show, the one that I've just ran, with more women in the writer's room than men, and I had 7 out of the 10 female directors be female, whereas before I've worked with one woman personally of all the shows I've written on, which is crazy. So I think it's hard to try to be a good person and to be a model and to not lose your mind while you're making decisions and trying to manage stress. And I think that all-encompassing job is what makes it so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Sera, you're doing 2 shows at the same time, which I'm always amazed.
Worked up to it, though.
Oh, you worked up to it.
That was not my first season show running, was 2 shows at the same time.
It's incredible still, too. And what do you guys think? I mean, obviously this is the all-female showrunners panel, and I'm hearing a little bit of stories in some of the things that you're saying, Lauren, but also, Gillian, you were a champion at sort of pleasing the boss, in a sense. And that seems to be, for me at least, something I find common in myself, but also a lot of women. You know, we're very good at accommodating, and there's certain things that we're raised to kind of think as women. Do you find any of those skills hindered you or helped you along the way? And is there something specific about being a woman showrunner that you think is special that you bring to the job? Or unique? Or something? I'll just keep filling it till
I find it so interesting what you're saying, because when you're on a staff up to when you're what we call the number 2, which is the most senior writer and producer underneath the showrunner, your job is really a yes and kind of job, where you just keep throwing spaghetti at the wall and you just keep trying to solve the problem. And then as soon as you become a showrunner, especially, I mean, my experience was that I was promoted into the job in season 6 of an existing show. Suddenly you go from yes and to no. And it's just, it's an adjustment. And it may be that it was more of an adjustment for me because as a woman, I probably was saying no as politely as possible, often not using the word no in my younger life. So I actually think this is probably one of the most helpful things in my personal development, that nobody has time for me to use 25 words when what I want to say is no hat. Like the actor cannot wear a hat in this scene. Or, no, we're not doing a mafia story in episode 6. It's because no is a way for them to say, like, okay, we're pushing that away and we can focus on something else. Like, everybody just wants to do their job well. And that's really what you learn your job is when you're a showrunner. It's not to dictate the story. It's not to dictate the shots to the director. It's to empower people to do their job really, really well. And the way that we do it is by clearing away everything that's not the show. So I think more than anything else, the heart of the job, I don't remember what your question is anymore. Keep going. The heart of the job is like we are holding that weird, tiny beating heart of the story, whatever that is. Someone has to, and it's the showrunner. And so we're able to say yes, no. We're also able to know, because it is a fight. I like the fight, but it is a fight every day with the studio and network. They have ideas and opinions, and they want to keep the cost down. And so every day, a million times a day, I'm sort of checking in with like the weird beating heart of the show going, can I afford to let this go? Can we afford to let that go? Can we tell them? And every now and again, the answer to that is no. And then I know what I need to fight for, what the bottom line is.
So that's interesting because you're talking about removing your ego from the process and the creativity in order to protect the seed that is almost a child of your.
I don't want to say not having human children. I hear they're more valuable and important than child children.
They're very breakable and very annoying a lot. But there is a sort of empowerment in that I'm fighting for this person versus myself, because I think it's hard for women to do. I'm generalizing, but it's harder for us because we're kind of taught from birth that we need to put other people first in a sense and care for others before ourselves. And I think that's really interesting what you're saying, because it kind of reflects the process of how do I be a boss but also protect this show in a way.
Yeah, I mean, having been a number 2 on many shows, to always a man, I know exactly the trap you fall into, which is sort of like, you become sort of like the nurturing supporter. Mm-hmm. You become the backbone of the dude, and breaking through that to be your own boss is liberating as fuck. But also, I mean, there's like a learning curve too, because at some point you're the one that has to sort of it's not my job to support, my job is to lead. And it is a difference, and you have to sort of literally take off a hat and put it back on, even though Sera doesn't want it. But it's a learning curve that I found that I needed to endure when I made the leap.
Gillian, you were going to say something?
Yeah, there certainly are these studies that say that women prefer to lead by consensus. And whether it's true of all women or not, it certainly applies to me. A mentor of mine, who happens to be male, gave me some words of wisdom. He said to me, you are very rational, you expect other people to be rational, and you lay out the whole argument thinking that once you've laid the whole thing out, everyone will agree with your conclusion. But you actually don't care, you don't need them to agree with you, you don't need to spend all that time laying out the whole argument. Just put your conclusion on the table. If people are willing to move forward with that, for reasons that differ from your reasons, that's fine. Let's just go with this. We don't have to agree on why. And if not, then you can get into the persuasion part. But I do tend to spend a lot of time persuading people, when the fact is, once you're the showrunner, a lot of times you can just say what you need and stop talking.
Yeah, I'm completely self-taught, actually. So I'm not coming from a place of having worked for a bunch of dudes. It's just been me, yay. But also it's been like really hard because I don't have the opportunities that working in a network system will give you. So it's been, I mean, thank God for the digital space, like YouTube and like the Kimberly Jessica's network that one of my shows is going to be on, actually. That opens up a whole new opportunity for women, because we're not having to fight our way up through the male verse. Sorry guys, but it's a thing, and that's I'm kind of self-created in that way, in that like I say, I came up from just doing live events and going, yeah, why can't I make a show? How naive of me. But it's worked. It's actually worked. It's won an award. And so that's the type of thing that you guys can do now, believe it or not. Oh my God, you can do a show, put it on the internet, be an influencer like the people sitting in this room right now. And that's a whole different situation than we had 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So.
And it's interesting, how can you guys speak to, we talk, and again, I always, every time I talk to showrunners, everything always gravitates toward having to manage people and being in charge of making decisions. But can we talk a little bit about that creativity aspect, and how do you get the best creative ideas out of the people that you're having to be the boss of, like Kimberly, and how do you translate that unifying sort of creative vision to people in a way that makes them excited versus like, oh God, I hate that person.
Right. One of the things for me is I had to get used to hearing no. And just because you hear no does not mean never. It doesn't mean that you'll never ever get what you want or where you want to be. What you have to be comfortable with is hearing no, and you have to be comfortable in your project and knowing, when you have that inner knowing that you have a good project and your project is filling a void. My project is filling a void. There is a void there for women in animation, for multicultural animated TV network and content that can speak to kids that look like me. Not only look like me, I'm from Panama, so my first language is Spanish, and I'm an immigrant. So I created a network in English and in Spanish to let these kids know that there are other Wonder Women, there are other kick-ass Buffy the Vampire Slayers, and looking for other people that have that kind of content that you can put on your network, because at that point, it's no longer about you. That's my message.
The creativity part is the fun part, and the interesting thing is that when you're in production on a TV show, it's sort of like there's constant timer. You never have enough time, you never have enough money. You get phone calls saying, this is 3 days too long, cut 3 days worth of material out of your script. But when you're in the writer's room, that's like a sacred place where the best idea wins, at least to start with. So my trick, every writer's room kind of has its own character. Some are more serious, some tell more stories from therapy, but I want to make sure it's a safe space for whatever this weird kind of synchronicity of these people coming together is. And for the Magicians, which is currently in production, we have a lot of toys in the writer's room. We have a hoodie, like a fleece hoodie that has a unicorn head on it that people wear to pitch ideas. We have an assortment of trophies that are given out when, first prize in giving 0 fucks is one of them.
I'm getting so many ideas right now.
We have one that's called the Unicorn of Awesome. We have a special one for when someone can't let go of a pitch and they finally get it through. It seems a little silly, and yes, we're bored, and we see each other for so many hours a day, but there is a little bit of a method to the madness, which is that producing a show is an adult job, that, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent making these shows, but creating television is like a child's job. It's for the kid inside of you. So we lure them out with candy and toys. Okay?
It's amazing. The talking stick is a unicorn stick.
It's literally a unicorn.
Yeah, I think it's like playing make-believe, and that's what I was, and then someone builds your fort. And it's so fun, and I think when you lose sight of how fun it is, then something's wrong. And I've been fortunate enough in the rooms that I've been in, predominantly, some mixed bags out there, but predominantly, I've had a lot of really good, positive environments, and it makes a huge difference, not only in your life, but creatively what you can do. If you work for someone who wants you to have a fully formed pitch every time you open your mouth, or doesn't give you the opportunity to like say something kind of stupid and like we can all laugh about it and move on and make it a safe creative space, then I don't think you're gonna get great ideas out of people. And I think, in terms of show running and as a woman, I do think it's about also figuring out your voice, like not only your creative voice, which is extremely important, and I think we all as writers spend a lot of time doing again and again, but also your voice as a manager, as a person, and who you'd want to work for. And to tell people, I've told writers, they didn't believe me initially because it depends on the environments they've been in, but I'm like, please disagree with me. I am bored with listening to myself speak. I am not, like, I have every right by the end of the day, like if we are, have a lot of discourse, to ultimately decide what we're doing. That's my job. You have to make that decision, but tell me if you think you don't love that. Talk to me about it. Like, that's what a room is for. That's why we're not, sitting by ourselves in front of a computer all the time. That's why TV is so great, is because it's a collaborative space.
I think in TV, like you have to, you can fall really quickly into the habit of episodic, of like, because there's a train and you have to write the next script so we can shoot it. But I think as soon as you sort of you start hearing the train, you get messed up, and creatively you're now focused on the timing and having to get a thing done rather than the broad sort of brainstorming, which is the fun part. So like the trick I use, aside from toys and candy, which I also use, is when we first get started, like forget episodes, forget how many episodes we have, forget scripts, forget all of that. What do we want to make? What's going to be fun for us? What can we dream up? And I think sometimes we forget that side of it, which is for me like why I love the room and love being in the room, is just sort of like, this could go anywhere. What feels great right now, and just sort of like ignoring the episodes that you have to get done for at least a time.
I think people tend to replicate the kind of room they were brought up in, which is, some rooms I think are toxic because the person in charge of them started out in a toxic room and they just don't know another way to do it. I was very lucky. My very first gig lasted for 4 years and was with one of the best showrunners in town. I worked on Highlander the series, seasons 2 through 5. And I was there for 4 years, and we always knew we were coming back before we went on hiatus. So there was this level of confidence of like, we know we're doing this. And because it was syndication, not network, we didn't have the specter of cancellation hanging over us. Once we got renewed, we were definitely making 22 episodes, which is a lot of episodes. And so there was that freedom of like, we could make big plans without hearing the train rumbling down on us. And the other advantage of a first-run syndication show, which is where I started my career, was small staffs. There were not a lot of people, so everyone, including the most junior person, which at the time was me, felt like it actually mattered what they said and what they wrote. When you have a huge staff, it can be hard to stay engaged in a project if you feel like nothing you suggest is ever picked up, or that nothing you have to offer is unique or adds to the mix. So making sure that everybody feels heard and like it matters that they're there is going to bring out the best in people, I think.
I want to talk a little bit about the negatives, because I think we all are interested to see, kind of as a woman, are there things you've seen, roadblocks, particular things you've had to overcome or deal with or dance around knowing that you're a woman. I mean, Lauren, you're talking about your writing room is the only one that's been a majority women ever in your life. It's crazy, but it's actually true in most of the industry. And, you know, I can't even remember, I screamed at one of my managers in the past because they're like, well, you know, it's really hard for a white guy in animation right now. And I'm like, you shut it. I was so angry. I was like, I literally was like, so mean. I was like, don't you ever have that come out of your mouth again? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're propagating a myth that is basically creating more resentment against women amongst men in this industry and making them less likely to hire them. Oh, I ripped him a butthole. But you hear that a lot, actually, and, you know, just as a woman, you know, you're working in a man's world. I mean, there's obviously a lot of breakthrough, but it's recent. And can you talk to any anecdotes or history or just observations, recommendations for women in this business having to kind of dance around that kind of stuff?
For me as an independent, it's been money, and it's been representatives, reps, agents and managers. Most investors are men, and they tend to invest in man things. And it doesn't really filter down to us as much. There's very, very few female investors that are angel investors or any kind of investors. So that's been a really big hurdle, is that I worked for a company for a while that, I'm not going to say too much, but just they make dude films, and they make the same film but with different dudes, and it's over and over and over, and it's may as well be the name of the company. And it's never changing, but hopefully people will realize the value of women's stories told by women. Ideally, that would be great. And then also agents and managers. I've heard stories about people that purposefully put male names on query letters, and they get a whole lot more interest than if they put a female name on a query letter. And that's just the sad reality. It's like an orchestra used to be mostly men until they started doing blind auditions, and now it's about 50-50. So, yeah, and that's a thing. That's a real thing. And so it's those two things are huge hurdles, especially for the independents like me and Kimberly, Jesicka.
I was totally, like you said, I was completely ignorant to it. I just thought that here I am, I'm here to fill a void that, you know, is not necessarily, you know, being represented. And I thought that, yay, I'll get picked up, I'll get represented, I'll get an agent, I'll get funding. No, that did not happen. And I was in utter shock. And this is no hate speech towards men, because trust me, I love men. No hate speech. Because, you know, a lot of times I've heard guys say, oh, you're one of those women hating, men hating. That's not the case. I'm just speaking on the reality of what so. And when I went to an event, it was the Licensing Expo, and all these amazing animations and just amazing creative properties were out there. In every booth I went to, I was in utter shock that it was all men that was creating the content, and they all looked the same. And there was no space for me, or there was no space for women. And so I feel that they're definitely, I'm hoping for a change, and I'm hoping to be a catalyst of that change in the animation space. So yeah, that's one of the negativisms that I've experienced.
You know, for my own sanity, I really never thought about it when I was coming up. I was the only woman in the writer's room most of the time, but I also never expected this to be easy. I mean, I'm much more privileged than many. I'm less privileged than some who are now complaining to your representatives. It's like a little harder for them. But so I'm not like the very top, easiest echelon. Okay, right? All of these sort of systemic injustices that we're working on are important to work on, and we should spend and devote some of our time to working on it. But if what you really want to do is make a certain kind of art, then do what you have to do to squeeze yourself in there, right? Just most of my energy just went to, I want to be a showrunner, how do I create a TV show? And I just pushed, and I didn't expend any energy thinking about whether setbacks were gendered. I just didn't. I mean, I've been thinking about it a little bit more lately because Me Too is like trending, and having a vagina is very trendy in 2018. I didn't think about it.
Two vaginas. I'm sorry.
Okay. Should we also say pussy? I don't know. I like it. But the other thing that I think about a lot is that, yeah, the world is incredibly unfair, and it's unfair based on your gender. It is unfair based on the color of your skin. It's unfair based on based on whether or not you are able in your body. There's a lot of things that are unfair, but those things that are challenges, or those things that make life more unfair to you, are also where art comes from. And I wouldn't trade a little extra, get a little higher budget, get in with a couple more people, whatever that is. I wouldn't trade it for my voice. I wouldn't trade it, because those people are boring. They're just boring. We've heard those stories. Like, I want to make something interesting. And so, because I can't separate being a woman from the rest of the package for what I want to do, for the art and the craft that I want to make, I don't spend much time thinking about that.
Yeah, it's funny, because for a lot of my career, especially when I was with my writing partner, we'd write genre. And so we'd go meet on jobs, and I'd see friends. I'm like, you're here for the woman job, right? Like, we're the women in the male room. And we'd all sort of sit there, sort of awkwardly, like, realizing, oh, they're only interviewing one of us because, you know, cars and guns. I guess. I never quite figured it out. And it's interesting because I feel like I'm at the place in my career where I don't go meet on the woman job anymore, because I'm kind of out. Like, because I know I kind of don't thrive in places where there's only room for one person like me. Because no matter what, I'm trying to sort of I'm trying to not be me, because me isn't good enough to have more of me in the room, apparently. But it's weird, because I do feel like it's changing. I don't feel like it's this, at least it's not as naked as I'm only hiring one woman, give me mid-level women. I don't feel like people are as comfortable to nakedly say that, nor are agents as comfortable to say, look, they're only interviewing one woman. Because that sounds horrifying right now. And I feel like finally we're accepting that that's a weird thing to say. Or to say, you'd be great on that show, but they don't hire women.
Oh no, I know a lot of people, women writers from 10 years ago when I first moved here, and then agents would pair their white male writers with someone, a woman or someone of ethnicity, because they're like, oh, there's that one slot. Yeah. Which is crazy when you think like, oh, that's a way to get in, but why? Why only have one slot? Why?
That's not true. I mean, that's not true on any of our shows. Yeah, that were like most of the Writers' Room for You, the other show I did was primarily female, and it's at least 50-50.
I think that's how it changes, is if you give anyone opportunity who is in the minority, who doesn't often get opportunity, they tend to be like, wait a minute, I don't like the way that this has been going. Like, I'd like some more diversity, please. I mean, for me too, it's not just about having women, it's about having different voices and people with different life experiences. So we're not all, I've been in rooms where, and I love these guys, but they all have like the same band that they love, and like, let's go to this concert together. And I'm like,
is it Fish?
Cool, but
it's Fish.
It's always Fish. It's super weird. And I'm like, what's Fish? But they bond because they're like the same generation. They've had similar upbringings. Like they dress similarly, and we make jokes about it. And it's fun at times, but you're like, this is a problem because we have a cast that is not you. They don't look like you, so that doesn't feel representative. And in terms of being a woman in the industry and some of the hurdles, I think it is hard for any of us who've been in a room where everyone's like, there's a female character. What do women do? And you're like, well, I'm one person, I have a perspective. I also have opinions about the male characters too. And having been pregnant this last go around, I think unfortunately in our industry, and we are pretty behind on it, my first instinct when I found out I was pregnant was, oh shit. Because I'm like, I just was given this opportunity, and I'm of course like a female showrunner, and now they're gonna be like, she got pregnant. We hired a pregnant lady. And that shouldn't be the first feeling. The first feeling I should have is, this is so exciting. To everyone's credit, it should be the standard. No one bat an eye, and everyone was very supportive, and timing-wise, it worked out well, where the last day of shooting, I literally gave birth. So like, just by happenstance, not planned, magical. It was amazing. My body was like, get out of here. We're finished. But women shouldn't have to fear that, and I think they do, because a lot of the time our industry has not been very helpful to combating that, and I think women are looked at like, oh, could she get pregnant? Should I hire her? And we gotta fix that.
Yeah, I actually wrote a pilot last year I was hired to write a pilot as a writer, and I got pregnant, and I didn't tell them until like 3 weeks before, and I'm not gonna name the person, famously bad person. He was like, what the f-? We're very happy for you. Not even kidding, it was the best phone call ever. Gillian Horvath. Gillian, God, I'm so sorry.
Oh, damn it.
Tired.
Story of my life.
No, I was so good up until now.
You absolutely were. As a woman who writes action and actually like competitively shoots guns, I was the beneficiary of that system of like, we need a woman in here who gets along with guys. Like I definitely got a lot of those jobs of we need one woman on this guy flavored show, and that. But I really am seeing a shift. I mean, the last couple shows I've been on have been more like a 50-50 split, and that's great. I mean, one of them I was staffing it, so I was responsible for it. But even when I'm not in charge, I see more of that. The last remaining prejudice that's getting on my last nerve is that they expect women to write women exclusively. That my agent is calling me frequently to say, they want a show with a female lead, so they want to hear from you. I would love, I mean, hey, I like writing women, but I also like writing male leads. And I mentioned I spent 4 years on Highlander the series. That is like a very masculine character. And I was happy to write him. I went on to Baywatch one year, and they actually said to me, we have a bunch of new characters, we have a bunch of new female characters coming in, so we want you to shepherd the voices of those characters. But it's not what wound up happening, because it turns out straight guys are more interested in writing women. And as a straight woman, I was really more interested in focusing on the male lifeguards. So it's a little equal opportunity objectification going on. And so I actually wound up having fun on that show, but the stated purpose of like, as the woman, you're here to shepherd the women is like, I don't know, I'm kind of fascinated with people who may or may not be women.
Mm.
When I broke in, it was a little easier for me, I think, because I'm a huge tomboy and I love sports. And it was sort of like a way into a conversation with male showrunners that I think a lot of women and possibly gay men don't have access to in their brains. I mean, they got over it really fast when I beat them all in fantasy football. That was sort of the door. But the issues I've been encountering is when there is a conflict once you already have the job. And what I've encountered is that the people that do the hiring and make the decisions often side with the narcissist because they're afraid of them when it's a he said, she said situation. And so there have been times where I've been sort of caught in the, I'm the one they're not worried about bitching and complaining to their managers and going to the press. I'm the one they're not worried about. So they're going to side with the other guy. I've encountered that a lot, and I've been backstabbed a lot. And I think as a woman, it's sort of, there's an expectation that we're better at taking it because it's harder for us already, which is frustrating as hell. Because, if you've been stabbed enough times, like that adds up. That really adds up. And it wears you down, and it doesn't matter how resilient you become. Because at the end of the day, if you're the one with the soul, you're still gonna feel it the most, So that's what I've encountered.
There's a lot of people are talking about diversity and the kind of stories that we're seeing a lot lately, and I think it's kind of a function of the glut of television right now. I mean, I was at a party. And this guy had a hand cream company, and then he's like, yeah, we're getting into television. I'm like, why? Who are you? I mean, yeah, of course. But it's like everybody, their uncle's like getting into TV, quote unquote. And I'm like, how? this could be a good thing, but I would like to see you guys' perspectives on how that's changing the landscape of creation and selling, and how do you think that impact is going to be long term on your own careers as well? Because a lot of you guys have worked mostly in network. Like, have you worked on a streaming platform? Is it different? Like, please talk about that while I get my notes.
I love what's happening right now. I fear it's a little bit of a bubble, like the housing bubble in Los Angeles. It will burst a little, but because there is so much more, there are so many more platforms, and probably one was born as we spoke these words. The way that they make money is not the same as it used to be, so you don't have to have that like 4-quadrant hit. I work for places like the Sci-Fi Network with Magicians and Lifetime Television for Women, whatever. I just finished a show called You that will premiere in September, which is I think their first male lead actually. But what they are focused on is very granular. Their idea of success is different than NBC's idea of success, and why that benefits us strange, weird, creative types is that our ideas are usually a little quirkier than what ends up on network TV. And so the version that we have in our head that doesn't appeal to like the House MD audience, we used to have to move it towards the center, and now there are thousands of, it feels like hundreds of places that are like, bring us your weirdest thing, right? So for as long as it lasts, I'm very, very happy and excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I work almost exclusively in the pay cable and streaming space now, and I love it, especially because of the specificity, because that's how I like to write. I don't want to write a 4-quadrant show. Like, I don't want to write for, like a CBS audience. I want my characters to have a very, very specific voice. And that means the show is going to be very, very specific and almost targeted to a certain audience. And that's why I love the pay cable and streaming space, especially right now. Because you're right. It's like, oh, you have a very like quirky, weird thing? That's what they want to hear right now. And it's so exciting to be alive in a time like this, especially as a woman, because I feel like now we're getting the opportunities to get in the door. To pitch things that are outside the box. We're kind of reserved for men for a while.
And it's amazing how, I'm sorry, Willow.
No, I was going to say, I call it the Wild West. It's just kind of, it's the land grab. Nobody knows how it's going to end. I think there's going to be probably, I don't even want to give it a percentage, but there's going to be, some will succeed, some will fail. We'll all find out together.
Kimberly, you have a unique story in that you're trying to create a digital platform yourself. And how do you notice that recently it's been easier to be able to get access to people with funding in that way, or how do you feel the digital space is right now?
It still is not easy. What I have found working for me is reaching out to people that have their own television networks on cable TV and partnering with them. Because even with funding, they still want to see your numbers. If your numbers aren't over 1 million, especially with funding or even getting representatives or even getting, licensing, it's what we call imposible. It's impossible. So I suggest that you reach out, get really non-traditional and grassrootsy, but non-traditional. Don't be afraid to reach out to influencers. Don't be afraid to, look up what new TV networks are on Antenna TV that are looking for content, or smaller cable TV networks. All those numbers, when you join with those people, can add to your numbers in your press kit. When your numbers in your press kit look like my numbers right now, that's when you start cracking doors open, because my goal is to go mainstream. I want this to be mainstream. I want this to be like a Cartoon Network, a Nickelodeon. And so you gotta have those numbers and those logos, and also getting the right kind of press is very important. After we got written up in Forbes, a lot of major agents, we didn't get picked up, but just for the fact that they reached out to us was huge. So we were on their peripheral vision. So press and reaching out to other people with large numbers, with good content, that the content is what's missing. So make sure your content is what's missing and what's needed in alignment with what's mainstream. I hope that makes sense.
And those are the networks that are going to survive too.
So how did you get that Forbes write-up?
Yeah, so, you know, I share a lot on social media on what I'm doing, and I'm not afraid to ask. I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna say, look, this is what I'm doing, will you mind writing up about us? And I reached out to them and I asked. I have no problem with asking for the sale, I have no problem with asking for the write-up, ask. And if you get no, keep asking, because somebody is gonna say yes.
Don't be afraid of the no.
That's amazing. I have been in digital a very long time, and just to go back to the glut, I remember, you know, when I first started doing scripted, and I was in a couple of very prominent scripted things, everybody thought, oh, that's where it is. And then everyone jumped in, and millions of dollars came in, and then the bubble burst in a terrible way. And I don't think it's ever recovered as far as like the quality of digital content. And I see it kind of a little bit rising up again, but a lot of people got a lot of careers out of it, and a lot of different things got picked up.
But I'm interrupting Felicia. Can we talk about, I just flashed on a memory when you said that, which kind of explains why you are Felicia Day, despite the fact that this is, you know, that you're being asked to write other things, and that the fact that, you know, empires rise and fall, the new empire wants to work with you, right? And we worked together on a show called Supernatural a few years ago. Yeah, you were part of the show. Thank you. I was talking to the line producer who said, I said, how is Felicia doing? And by the way, we wrote the role and we were like, we'd like a Felicia Day type, and we're lucky enough to get Felicia. And he said, she is fucking incredible. She just worked a whole day, and every time she went back to her trailer, she was working on a pilot. Like, she's writing a script at the same time. I mean, it isn't really a magic formula, and it doesn't really change with the times. I mean, it's good to be abreast of the new developments, but really the thing you have is grit and hard work.
It's about work. Whenever I feel like, oh, I'm not getting ahead, oh, I'm just not working hard enough. And that's what I'm learning from each one of you. Like, it's just a lot of hard work, and you have to everybody has to overcome something. I just want to ask one question, because we're going to do a bunch of Q&A, you guys. So we're going to have a mic in the middle, and we'll do a big old chunk of Q&A. I'm a new mom, and I have a baby, and I would love to hear from each of you what you wish you'd been taught when you were younger that you could carry through this world. I mean, to me, when I have a whole new worldview now, and I think that all the problems in the world stem from preschools going boys on the left and girls on the right. And I don't know why, it just is like, oh, if we didn't do that, then we'd all just be able to hang out with all the weird hiccups. I miss my naive thing, but like, why teach that they're separate in the beginning, girls and boys? So I don't know, is there something that you wish you knew as a child or a teenager or whatever that you would have carried through and would have helped your career?
There is something that actually happened that my dad taught me. And that's not only the world is your oyster, but if somebody else is doing a thing, you can probably do the thing. It's not a big mystery. If you want to learn to drive a truck, you can do that. I don't. I want to run a TV show, but it takes work, it takes smarts, it takes being willing to learn new things, making mistakes, putting good people around you. Don't be afraid to hire people that are better than you. Surrounding yourself with knowledgeable people is just such an education, and that's been the biggest help for me since childhood, is knowing that if I really, really want to do something, I mean, other than like Olympic swimming or something, I mean, yeah, but something that I can actually do, you can do that. You can do that thing. Don't be your own worst enemy. Don't put hurdles in front of yourself. Well, I can't because it's like, no, why can't you? Why can't you? Answer that.
Lauren?
Man.
I'm sorry, we're gonna go down the road, guys, okay?
So, you know, I have a 5-month-old now, and he's a little boy, and I think in particular a lot about how to raise a young man right now in this climate, because I don't like a lot of what I've been seeing and experiencing, and our, you know, to get political, our president's just the worst. And so I think a lot about that, and just about making sure that he feels okay to have feelings and emotions, and he doesn't have to be a certain type of thing. I just think across the board we're gonna look at gender differently, I hope, moving forward in every avenue, that just because a boy is a boy doesn't mean he will stay a boy even. But for me, I think it's confidence. I mean, I think I've always been a confident person in a lot of ways. At the same time, there's always this nagging thing in the back of my head of like second guessing. And I spent a lot of time the last couple of years trying to find my voice again, of not just a voice of being in a room of many people and working for one person and one type of show, but really who am I and who am I as a writer and what do I want to put out there. And I think a younger version of me would be helped by, you know, the older version of me just lending a hand, being like, hey, it's okay, it's unique and weird, and you should embrace that shit.
Monica?
I think, like I said earlier, when I first got a showrunning gig, I thought that, you know, nice girls don't get the corner office book. And 2 years later, we were fired, and we hadn't been nice. So apparently that book lied. But I realized I love writing because I love humans. Humans are fucked up and weird and flawed and fascinating. And if I lead with kindness, my job is easier. I don't turn people down because I'm mean. I'm turn people down because that's a really great effort, but that's not what we're looking for. And I think that there's an honesty and a kindness that you can have as a boss, that you're confident in your story and you're confident in the people you hire, but that you want what you want. It's not about being mean, it's not about being disrespectful, but also having a zero tolerance for assholes, frankly. I mean, it's enough. They get away with a lot, and they don't need to be in my life if I have any say over it.
Sera? If I could tell younger me anything...
Yeah, okay, that's a rewrite of my question in a much better way.
Is that going to be your question? I'm so enthralled with your answer.
It's so better.
I would tell her, like, never apologize for liking what you like. I spent a lot of my younger years thinking that what I had to do to be successful and frankly to be like accepted in the world was to make myself more like the people around me and to like what they like. And now I realize that certainly my power as a storyteller comes from just, I don't know, I like it. I want to explore it. I want to take it apart and chop its head off and see what makes it tick, right? I think the sooner that you can get in touch with that and stop questioning it and stop trying to justify it to anyone else, the sooner you're going to be in touch with your voice.
Well, she switched up the question now.
Sorry, it's totally my fault, Amy. You can go back. Folks, issues revised.
All right, so on yours.
That's a good. Both of them are good questions. Just go with it. You're flowing, guys.
I think what I would tell a younger version of myself is to affect your experiences. Don't let your experiences affect you. And there's a way of doing that to where it's not about sort of building a thick skin that you don't let anybody in. There's just a realization that projects come and go. Projects come and go. And I was reminded of this recently because I found something that I had written like a long time ago. It was like a notebook. I used to keep notebooks full of ideas, just weird, crazy thoughts, you know, going back to when I was in elementary school.
Oh.
And I saw a story in there that was basically Monsters, Inc. Like 5 years before Monsters, Inc. came out, you know, or 10 years. 5 years. 5 years before Monsters, Inc. came out. And I was like, damn, like I was super creative. And the thing that you sometimes forget in TV is your own voice, because part of your job is to mimic the voice of your boss. And if you've been doing TV and if you've been grinding, like some of us have for so long, we just become professional mimics, and we become really good at writing in other people's voice, and you forget your own. So it was like, I decided after seeing that book that like, I'm gonna take 2 hours every week, and I'm just gonna brainstorm shit. I'm just gonna think about stuff. And so Sunday night, I just went to a cafe and was like, I'm just gonna, if I can make anything right now, what would I make? And I came up with 2 ideas. I happened to have a meeting on Monday, the next day. Sold it in the room. Sold one in the room. I allowed myself that space that you forget sometimes. Like that's why we all do this, right? We have the brain, we have an imagination, and we need to explore it. And you know, sometimes you just gotta put aside the bullshit and just embrace that part of yourself.
Gillian?
Well,
the note behind the note that I heard in your question is that you're looking for parenting advice so that is it your daughter? Will
Just
grow up
theoretical
as
advice.
awesome as everyone here.
I mean, yeah, but also it kind of, Sarah morphed it into a more succinct question about things that you wish you had known as a younger girl.
I mean, for me, this is a chance to tell an awesome story about my awesome mom. Hi, Mom. Which is that when I was a little kid, I wanted to grow up to write Hardy Boys books, which in a way is not that different from growing up to write TV shows. They were serialized and they were written by a bunch of different people, all with one name slapped on. What?
Oh my God.
And then I thought I wanted to be a poet, which also has things in common with script writing, I am here to tell you. But I planned to grow up to be a professional poet, and my mother was like, oh, you'll never move out of my guest room. Not that she didn't think I could succeed as a poet, but success as a poet does not get you out of your mother's bedroom. And then when I was watching TV and noticed the names of the writers going by and realized that's a job, right? Just like Willow said, if somebody does it, you can do it. And I said, oh, I've changed my mind. I want to write television. And my mother said, awesome, you can buy me a beach house. Which I'm ashamed to say I have not done. But that automatic assumption that she made that I would be able to be a television writer was so valuable. She didn't say, oh, that's very difficult, or how would you even get started? She said, well, you're gonna be rich. So that level of confidence in me, I feel like I really carried that into my first jobs and didn't worry about whether I could do it.
Kimberly? I have two things that I want to share. Number one is magic is real. Believe in magic. And when I say magic is real, I mean that look at Disney. Look at what he's done. That's magic. And when you want to do something, and you want something that seems completely impossible to happen, you find people that are doing it. And that's when magic becomes possible. If the front door is locked and the back door is locked, start looking on the side windows, start finding basement windows, hell, make a door. But magic is real. Number two is on your path as a kid growing up, relationships come and go. And I hear a lot of people say, even my students years ago say, man, a part of me died when that happened. I need you to resurrect that part of you because you're still here on the planet. Bring that part of you back alive. Don't die with situations, circumstances, and people and relationships. Wake up, wake that part of you up, because that's where the magic is. A lot of people have probably died with the cure for cancer. So don't let your dreams die in you. Find it, it's there. There are people doing it. Make friends with them.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. We are going to do Q&A now, so if you'd like to, I believe, line up in the middle and ask some questions.
There goes
Don't
Granny.
hit each other.
Granny, get it.
Single file, please.